Segment 3, Gold and Black Live, kind of reliving this is about as fun a show as it can be for me because these guys are all my heroes from growing up. The 1968-69 Purdue men's basketball team finished 23-5, 13-1 in the Big Ten, went to the national championship game, and really is still captured it for longtime Purdue fans. I don't think there's ever been, you could argue Glenn Robinson time, and it was this very special time at Purdue, but the way this team led the nation in scoring, and I think scored over 100 points 6 or 7 times in that season, it was a lot of fun to watch. Billy Keller, are you there?
I am. Alan, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, and your old high school classmate and fellow state champion Ralph Taylor is here as well. How are you? Did you end up doing your golf outing today, or did the weather curtail you guys?
Well, I'll tell you what. We postponed it till tomorrow. I just decided it was a little too windy today to play, a little overcast, really kind of cloudy. Looks like it could rain, so we've kind of postponed it. So anyway, I'm happy to be able to call in and visit with you and my good friend Ralph.
Well, it's balmy in Indiana. There's a lot of snow, but it makes for some good sand traps. But it's 50 here today. It's almost like it's shirt sleeve weather. But Billy, obviously we're running a picture, and you and I had a nice conversation yesterday about a very interesting and unique basketball team. I mean, this was an eclectic group of guys that kind of all came together at the right time. And talk about that and just the ability to see a team really play as well as it can. And you had some injuries down the stretch that made it difficult, but this was a very, very together basketball team.
Well, there's no question. I'm sure that you and Ralph and George have talked a lot about the team going to the NCAA final game and played against UCLA. And I'll tell you, it's just tremendous memories. Even today, it just seems like every time we get into or get close to March Madness, you always start thinking about, how it was back in those days and playing against probably one of the best teams and best coached teams, and Johnny Wooden playing against UCLA. And even though we didn't win, which was really a shock to us, we felt like we really had a good chance. We had played well against UCLA the previous times, but as you mentioned, we did have some injuries, and we didn't really shoot particularly well in that final game. But, we felt like we really had a chance, and so it was kind of a sting to lose. But I think after years have gone by, we look back on it and say, hey, we lost to one of the best teams to ever play at the college level, and against one of the best players to ever play at the college level. And so we have a great pride in even being second best of that year.
And I just got finished reading Seth Davis's book on John Wooden, and really was interesting. A lot of things, we all know a lot of the story of John Wooden, but what was it like, and I'll start with you, Ralph, on sitting across, you played him as your junior year, and then obviously twice your senior year, but Lou Alcindor, a.k.a. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, these guys were legendary college basketball players. Did you have the tendency were you guys in awe of them at all? And obviously you didn't play like you were, but what was it like to be, you were peers with these guys in terms of basketball players, and what was that like for you?
Well, I don't think the team was necessarily in awe. Maybe in awe of Lou Alcindor, because to see a human being that tall, that would have led you in awe. But I think we had our own 7-footer, Chuck Davis, who outweighed Lou Alcindor by about, 10 or 15 pounds. And actually he did a pretty decent job of neutralizing him as well as you can neutralize someone that talented. So I think we really were not in awe of them. I guess the thing I remember most about John Wooden was the fact that he was able to recruit what nowadays would be considered 5-star McDonald's All-Americans. But other than that, I think we felt confident enough that we could beat them.
And for Billy, John Wooden, looking back and the legend that is John Wooden, what's it like, with looking through the glasses of 45 years of having an experience of not only playing them 3 times, but the opportunity to be in his presence and be in the presence of that great program at UCLA?
Well, I think anytime you think about Johnny Wooden, you have to be kind of in awe of him. Like Ralph said, I don't think we were necessarily in awe of their team, but I think we were kind of in awe, obviously, of Kareem at the time, or Lou Alcindor. But Johnny Wooden was the guy on the sideline who had all the success, and and so we were really in admiration of him. And of course, he was a former Boilermaker, which we honored that. And one thing that Ralph mentioned, if I may go back, had we had Chuck Davis, Chuck struggled a little bit against quicker people, maybe smaller players that played the inside position. But one thing that he did is, I'll tell you, and Ralph would probably reiterate this as well, I think Chuck really got excited and really got pumped for playing against Kareem at that time. He had weight advantage over him. Chuck did a really good job the previous times before that final game of keeping Alcindor away from the basket, keeping him away from the basket to rebound and getting second opportunities. And Chuck really took great pride in blocking him out and keeping him away from the boards. And I think, and Ralph, you'll have to help me here, but I think Kareem at that time, I think he just totally dominated the inside. We had two guys in Jerry Johnson and Frank Kaufman that really didn't have the weight to play against Kareem. I mean, those guys could go out on the floor and do some things, but Kareem just really dominated because those guys weren't really able to push him away. But what great memories we have. Ralph, what do you remember about Chuck doing that kind of a job on Kareem?
I agree with what you said, because I think Chuck weighed, about 240, and Alcindor was around 215 or 220. And I think had he not separated his shoulder against Miami of Ohio, I think I'm not sure if the outcome would have been different in the championship game against UCLA, but I think it would have been a lot closer because, as Billy pointed out, Lou had his way against Jerry and Frank, who were a lot smaller height-wise and also weight-wise. So I think missing Chuck really changed part of the game.
Part of the fun part of this show, guys, is that the people from the chat room will send us questions in. We had somebody that guessed a commented in about saying he was a sophomore at Purdue at Madison Fieldhouse for the game, and when the team got back to campus the next evening, there was a pep rally in the arena, and Rick Mount was asked to come onto the court and duplicate the game-winning shot. He said, if I remember correctly, he took it 3 times and could not make it. He made it when it counted, though. Do you guys remember anything about that? I don't remember going to the pep rally, but I do. I never heard that story. Is that urban legend, or is that? Do you remember that at all?
For me, that's urban legend. I don't know, Billy. You might have a different.
I can't imagine Rick missing three uncontested shots from that spot. But Billy, any memories of that?
No, I'm with Ralph. I don't think that happened. I can't imagine Rick going out there and trying to duplicate what he did on that last shot. We're just happy it went in. That was an exciting time. As I recall, I think I fouled out of that game.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I was so pleased that we ended up winning and having an opportunity to continue on to play. But no, I don't think that ever happened.
All right, and I want to, only because I kid Billy about this sometimes, but senior day, which is Sunday for the Purdue men's basketball team, and senior day for you guys back in 1969 was really March the 8th, 1969 was truly one of the great. It wasn't, senior days weren't the way they do them now. They weren't the big speeches
Right.
and all that stuff. But you put a 44-point pasting on Indiana at 120-76. Still a record that still stands for the men's game in Mackey Arena history. Billy Keller goes for a cool 31. I know Rick had, I think, 40 in that game, but take me back through that game, not just all the points you scored, but what it was like to have that type of game. Because you remember Indiana early in the year, it was a 1-point game in Bloomington, and what that was like for you.
Well, I think one thing that made it special was not only the win, but I think Jerry Oliver, who was Ralph
Right.
and my high school basketball coach, was the assistant for IU at the time. You remember that, Ralph?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And so that was kind of a special thing for us to be able to play well in front of Jerry. And any time you're going to play against IU and you win and you win big, it has to be an exciting time. It was. I remember the fans really were so excited to beat IU. I mean, we got up and down, like you mentioned before in the intro. You know, we scored over 100 points several times during that year. And so being able to put it on IU made a lot of Purdue fans very, very happy.
You know, you had the chance to do that in the send-off to the University of Wisconsin, where the NCAA tournament was played. You almost can't have a better send-off than that. You've had some great, and maybe both of you guys, you talk about the toughest teams you faced. Obviously, Ohio State that season in Mackey Arena, or the Purdue Arena as it was called at the time, an overtime win. And Ohio State, the only team to beat you in Columbus. But were they, Ralph, the toughest team in the league? I know Iowa was also very good the following year, but to the teams that kind of gave you guys the most trouble, Northwestern sometimes did too.
Northwestern, Michigan State, Wisconsin. So it really wasn't a cakewalk that year.
Yeah.
A lot of good quality teams.
Yeah, and Billy, what do you remember about the Ohio State, and had some very good, very physical teams, certainly under Fred Taylor. What do you? I remember the overtime win in at Purdue, but talk about some of the teams that you found were some of the toughest to face for you guys that season.
Well, I can't really remember. I guess that season, Ralph and I maybe can put our heads together. But Ralph, remember we took that Arizona trip?
Sun Devil Classic.
Yeah, did we play against Columbia?
That was in Hawaii.
That was
Jim
in
McMillan
Hawaii.
in Hawaai, right?
But Arizona State in the Sun Devil Classic.
Yeah, that was really a tough game for us at that point. I don't remember that year. We just had so much success. We only lost, I believe, didn't we lose 5 games that year?
4 games regular season, then of course the championship.
And then the final. Gosh, I'd have to sit down and try to recall the teams right off the top of my head. I don't remember, but we just played them one at a time, and the whole idea was to win them one at a time and get to the Big Ten and win that Big Ten championship as we did, and continue on into the NC2A tournament. But I remember the Hawaiian Classic that we ran, and then I think, was it our junior year, Ralph, that we went to New York and played in the Kodak Classic?
That was our sophomore year.
Yeah, right.
Sophomore year.
Yeah.
Well, I know we had some good games out there as well, and so, I've slept since then, Alan, and I can't really remember.
Me and
I
you
tell
both.
you, Ralph has a much better memory than I.
I
I'm
don't
so much
think
older
so.
than he is.
One of the things, and we obviously have paid homage to Bob King many times on this show and his impact, but George King, as a basketball coach, I'll give you guys, both of you, a chance to describe what kind of coach he was, and what I know he was fiery at times, and certainly, but talk about the experience of playing for a guy like George as the head man.
Ralph, you want to take that one?
You can go first.
Well, I'll tell you, I think George was one guy that was really a good delegator. He delegated authority to our coaches. Of course, Joe Sexton was there, and we called him Jumbo Joe, I believe, and he was kind of the good guy, and did his thing. I'm not sure if Bob was on the court a whole lot. I don't remember him, but I know that he was fiery. He had a streak in him that, he wanted guys to work hard. He expected you to work hard. But he also expected you to go to class and do the things you were supposed to do academically, because that was one of his things that really stood out in my mind, that Bob King really stood for, as far as the athletes and making sure that they get their education and perform in the classroom. But he was tough on the floor when he was on the floor, and Bill, he's a guy that everybody misses. Anybody that's associated with Purdue or has ever been associated with Bob King realizes how wonderful a person that he was, and how instrumental he was in the success of Purdue, and especially recruiting. He recruited Ralph and I both, and did it professionally and did it right, and obviously that's the reason why we went there. And I think when I think about Bob King, I think about Purdue, and when I think about Purdue, I really think it's almost like Bob King University, if you will. He's one of the reasons, and one of the big reasons we went there, and I know that I sure do miss him, and I think about him often.
And Ralph, one of the I think the byproducts of Bob King and that legacy has been how close the Purdue basketball family, use that term, but it still gets used by Matt Painter. I mean, it's an important part. All the alums, all the former players that have played from your era, from before your time, but that's a special part of being a former Purdue basketball player.
Well, I think so, and I echo what Billy said both about Coach Bob and Coach Jordan. I think the other thing I think that Coach Bob was able to do, and I think to some extent with Joe Sexton and George King, was the fact that this was a time of racial turmoil around the country. And our team, we had individuals from the segregated South, Herm Gilliam, and we had individuals from de facto segregated places in the North, and people from all white communities in the North. And Billy and I went to integrated high school, so you bring in all these different guys together. And I think for an individual like Herm Gilliam, this was such a culture shock.
Yeah.
But I think through Bob King, he was able to help Herman get through that, as well as helping Leroy Keys and others.
Yeah.
So I think the university should be commended for what the coaching staffs were able to do to not have the same racial turmoil on our athletic teams like some of the other schools had to deal with.
Absolutely. And we're down to about our last minute, but I think we'd be remiss, and Herman Gilliam really, again, for longtime basketball fans, really captured the imagination. He could do it all and do it with a wonderful flair. But Billy, you guys had a relationship and certainly had the opportunity to play with each other, and Ralph as well. But talk about put into perspective what a kind of player Herman was.
Well, I believe that Herman was a player before his time. They talk about athleticism today. Back then, they didn't really talk so much about athleticism as I recall. Maybe Ralph does, but I think Herman was so athletic. I mean, he could run, he could jump, he could do everything with the basketball. I mean, he could handle it, he could pass it, he could rebound it, he could shoot it. He could defend. He could really do it all. And when I look back on that team, and again, Ralph is going to have an opinion on this as well. But when I look at that team that we had, and it was all put together, I really believe that Rick did his thing and he could score, and Rick was a great shooter. There's no question about it. But I think the guy that really held it all together and was the main cog of that team was Herman Gilliam. I love the guy. I was absolutely crushed when he passed away several years ago, and we just have such great memories together. I'll never forget being in Hawaii and the smile that he had and how he approached people, and I just think about him often and the things that he was able to do on the basketball floor. But the thing is, not only was he a good player or a great player and continued on into the NBA and played for, 8 or 9 years, and then also I think played on the championship team, but he was a quality person. And so I know we both have great love for Herman Gilliam, and so disappointed that he's gone.
Yeah, Billy, Ralph, talking about his mother's still alive and one of the great ladies, and yet Herman was a special person.
Special person, and Billy pointed out in the '60s you didn't use the word athleticism. Was not the word. Someone pointed out to me that athleticism today means you can run fast, jump high, but as far as fundamentals, you might be lacking a little bit. So, but I think Herman and Billy, they both were just very well-rounded individuals, fundamentally sound. Most of the guys were fundamentally sound on the team. And I think it's interesting, a lot of people today talk about LeBron James and his chase down blocks.
Yeah.
When guys are going up for Herman Gilliam did that in the '60s, where he chased a guy down, block his shot. Herman also got a lot of his moves watching Earl the Pearl Monroe. Went to Winston-Salem State. Herman grew up in Winston-Salem and was able to watch Earl the Pearl, but he was just really a great human being on top of being a great basketball player.
One of the great things in the early days of Mackey Arena was the tip drill, as you guys used to end up your warm-ups, and the whole place would go nuts. And Herman always would have, I think in your sophomore years, I want to say, and I maybe my own memory, but that he would dunk the ball at the end because the dunking was legal, and I don't know if he was the only one. Ralph may have done it too, but it got the crowd just going absolutely crazy, and it was a lot of fun to watch. It's great now to watch and fun, but I have to admit, and maybe I'm dating myself, there was nothing quite like that 1968-69 team and the imagination that captured of people like myself. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Billy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And Ralph as well. We had a lot of fun talking about this. We could do this all afternoon, but I appreciate it very much. And Billy, we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Good health to you and your family, and bring some of that warm weather on a permanent basis from Florida up here. But I know you will.
Oh, that would be great. Have you got 1 second?
You sure do. Go ahead.
I just want to say that Ralph Taylor and I have been friends for a long, long time.
You want to give the year?
And,
you want to give the
yeah,
year?
We haven't even gotten into the whole Indianapolis and Washington thing, but go ahead. It's the internet. Well, we got time. What's up?
I just don't think that there's a finer person out there than Ralph Taylor. I just think he's a loyal person. He's a guy that loves being a Boilermaker, loves people, very intelligent, got his education with good grades, and you won't find a better person than Ralph Taylor. And I tell you what, if I had to have another brother, which I have one in my brother Bernie, if I had another brother, I would want him to be just like Ralph Taylor.
Well, and that's quite a compliment.
I love him to death.
Well, thank you, Billy. And the feeling's mutual towards you as well.
Well, I appreciate it, and I really mean that, Ralph.
And we're going to dedicate an entire show to talking about the Washington Continentals of 1965 as well, but that's a whole other story. Actually, I've never really, in all my watching Purdue sports and talking about it, I haven't heard of. It was a little bit before my time of watching Indiana State basketball, Indiana high school basketball, but a great team that won a state championship too, and Ralph and Billy a key part of that operation. All right, guys. Well, thanks again so much. I want to thank our sponsors, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and of course Basham Reynolds, Triple X, and Hilton Garden Inn. We will have a show next week heading into the it would be the men's Big Ten tournament. Hopefully, the Boilermaker men will make it till Friday. We'll look forward to talking about that and more as we head into tourney time. It's always a fun time of the year. Ralph, thanks again so much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you and hearing from all of you next week on Gold and Black Live.